Well, now we'll have a Dharma talk by our guest, Reverend Kisei Costenbader from the Great Vow Zen Monastery. She has lived there for 10 years. She received ordination 7 years ago, and has been increasingly moving into the teaching function at the Zen Center. Is a Dharma holder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you received any of the precept transmissions yet?
Yes, precepts transmission. Yeah.
Okay, so now can give precepts. And thanks so much for tuning in with us tonight and bringing your talk on the new, the first free women. So take it away, Kisei. Okay. And is there a way to put her kind of in the speaker? There you go. Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here and for being here with me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I've been really inspired by this new translation of the Therigatha. So the Therigatha is the enlightenment poems, awakening poems of the Buddha's first women disciples. I've heard also it's the first compilation of women's poetry in recorded history. And a new translation came out very recently. Actually, I got the book right as we were going into quarantine. So we're cloistered here at the monastery. And this has been partially my pandemic relief. So this is the book. You can see it, The First Free Women. And I'll be just talking from one of those poems on Thursday nights through the Heart of Wisdom Zoom. I've been doing a poem each night, and I just started that a couple weeks ago. And so we're just going through the book poem by poem and hoping that by the end of the book, we'll be able to meet in person. So the poem that I chose for tonight is by Rohini, whose name means wandering star. And this poem for me really speaks to why I'm so excited about these poems to begin with. It's a poem about that every aspect of your life, the challenging times, the dark times, the beautiful times, can be an entrance gate into Dharma, that our life is the path. And she really affirms this in this poem, and the whole collection of poems really speak to women meeting the challenges of their life and speaking about, jealousy and grief and the loss of a child, a husband leaving, just the things that we run into, right? And turning them into wisdom. And through difficulty, through, the real human emotions that arise. This isn't about bypassing or gliding through life on equanimity, but really meeting what arises, which is very inspiring to me. So I'll read the poem and then we'll go through it and pick out the practice points. Oh, Rohini, wandering star, you don't become the cloth just because you put on robes. You don't turn into empty space just because you carry a bowl. The sun doesn't bow down. Trees don't throw flowers at your feet. Birds don't start answering when you call. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make room for even your deepest regrets. But you don't become the cloth of the robe overnight. It can begin very quietly, something you barely even notice, like the touch of water on your skin. like a knife in a drawer, like the next 5 minutes, unless they're your last. The path isn't a line on a map. It's a great and shining world. Enter wherever you like. Enter wherever you are. You might get thrown back once or twice, but if you push through the outer layers, oh, my sisters, then you will know the true welcome that is the very essence of the path. So I've been treating these poems like koans, and koans are, meant to be entered and felt intimately, not meant to be understood or taken apart intellectually, although that component is there too. And when I first started working on koans with my teacher, Chosen Roshi, she said something that really struck me. She said each line should be considered, or each word should be considered thoroughly. And that's true of every good poem, isn't it? That each word is a window. Each word is a hologram. It contains the whole of the poem. Its placement is important. So I thought first to look at the name of this woman, and I'd like to do that. Just one to remember these names of these women who've been lost in history and now we're bringing back, which I think is really, maybe one of my callings as a Dharma, ordained Dharma woman, just to remember the legacy of all the lives that have gone before us, that have been dismissed in history and now we're rediscovering. But her name is a koan in and of itself, Wandering Star, wandering. What does that bring up for you to wander? Do you know this experience of wandering? Wandering. Perhaps walking without anywhere to go. Just walking around your neighborhood, in the forest, on a trail, and walking and letting intuition guide you, the sound of a bird, stopping maybe at a flower. Those times when we just let ourselves be pulled, maybe by synchronicity, maybe by intuition, just wandering with no place to go. Perhaps curiosity is guiding. And wandering can also, for me at least, bring up a negative connotation of wasting time or getting lost, feeling like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I should be doing something more productive. Wandering. I think for Zen students, being confident in wandering is part of our dharma, is part of our task. Confident in uncertainty. How comfortable are you in uncertainty? In a way, you could say we are always wandering. And sometimes we feel like we have this element of controlling where we're going. We feel in control. And then something happens, right? And that sense of being in control is questioned, and we realize, oh, I'm just wandering. And that can be really a beautiful thing. And then we have star. There's a koan in our tradition, everyone has their own light. We are all stars, right, in this vast sky. I was picturing that as we were sitting, just, we're sprinkled all over. I think everyone here is in Oregon, but we're sprinkled all across. And, if you can see us all as stars, we're making some interesting constellation in the space that's separating us, even though we feel so near as well. Isn't that interesting? So wandering through the sky or the space of our life. So the poem, now let's go back to the poem, which I would love to do word by word, but we might be here all night. And although I am so inspired by it, I don't know, you might get bored. So we'll just pull out some of the important practice points. I feel like this poem is speaking to something very essential about the spiritual life, the life of Dharma. So let's look at the first phrase. She says, you don't become the cloth just because you put on the robes. Now, that's an intimate line. It brings up for me the robe chant. So this isn't just about being ordained or not being ordained, although she was a ordained practitioner, but what is that robe of our lives, the robe of practice that we wear? And so the robe chant goes, how great the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, wrapping ourselves in the Buddha's teaching. We free all beings. We free all living beings. So is she saying you can say the words, you can have good posture, you can study the sutras, you can listen to podcasts of all the famous Dharma teachers, and even now do retreats with them online. You can get the right gear, wear the right outfit, but it doesn't mean that you experience liberation. Liberation is more intimate than anything that we can do on the outside, although having supports and practice is really helpful. So it doesn't mean your life will be the seamless intimacy of selfless service just because you're doing it right. And at the same time, you can't escape this seamless robe. You are knitted in the cloth. Your life is seamless. It is intimate. You can't escape this moment. And this moment is whole. This moment is intimate. Is freedom itself. Reality is free, is liberated. Our nature is the whole seamless cloth. And yet, that isn't always our experience. And these first images are filled with, I feel like, both caution and longing, spiritual longing. She's saying this path is intimate, like a seamless cloth wrapping everything. Everything we encounter is included in this life, in this cloth of our life that we wear every day. Touching your body. And this path is spacious. It's vast. It shows us the illusory nature of things. So the next line, she says, you don't turn into vast space just because you're carrying a bowl. All things are empty yet apparent. This includes thoughts. This includes a sense of self. This includes emotions. And yet these are gifts. The stuff of our lives is gifts. These are ordinary miracles. The next line, she says, the sun doesn't bow down every night. The trees don't toss flowers at your feet. The birds don't come when you call. And I actually like to flip this line around, because the sun does bow down every night. If we're paying attention, we can enter that and feel the glory and the magnificence of it, of a sunset. And the trees do toss flowers as they're turning to fruit, especially at this time of year. And we can celebrate both the impermanence and the magnificence of walking. I don't know if you've been walking in your neighborhoods, but I have been walking outside of the monastery on the street, and just the flowers of spring are just gifting themselves. Irises are out, and the wisteria. And the birds are speaking to you if you listen, right? Such beautiful companions to Zazen if you have your window open and the birds are just having their conversation and you're included. And then she says, and this, I repeated this line because I think for me it's the line I most need to hear. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make space for even the deepest regrets. The path, and we were also talking about this very human life, my life, your life, and let's include everyone's life there, because we're all trying the best we can. And she's saying we are resilient. Our life is resilience. And she's saying you can't do it wrong. Even if you stop sitting meditation for years, even if you sit down for 30 minutes and all you do is plan what you're going to do for the rest of the day, even if you can't find your breath for days, you can't fall out of this practice. The present moment is always right here, touchstone, touchstone. And there's some aspect of the present moment that you are awake to, always awake to. You can't fall out of your life, and you can, and you do meet the consequences of your actions. Every moment you're doing this. And you can meet the unpredictable. You can meet the uncertain. You have this strength, you have this resiliency. You can feel your feelings and make amends when it's appropriate. And you'll know. You'll know when that's called for. And know that your life, the path, the Dharma, however you think of it, true nature, forgives you. From one perspective, I've been reflecting on this a lot, because one of my spiritual ideals is that awakened society is possible, and to live, what does it mean to live a truly awakened life, a life of compassion? And I feel like right now there's always a gap. There's always a gap between the compassion I can experience and what I'm actually living. That's a hard gap. But it's good to feel that. Maybe it's sometimes we call the divine dissatisfaction, that we're never quite living up to our fullest potential. And this is space for the inner critic, and I don't want to get there. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about that that feeling of ah, intimacy is, and then I put something on top of it and just can't quite communicate it. Can't quite. It's hard to feel like we're living authentically, genuinely. And yet we aspire to, we keep aspiring to. One of the places I find deep solace is Dogen Zenji, founder of the Soto Zen lineage that we're all a part of. At the end of his life, spoke of his life as one continuous mistake. And then the other side, right? We're always doing the best we can. We're always doing the best we can. And that goes for everyone, right? With whatever thoughts, whatever emotions are up at the time that we make a decision or say the thing, we're doing the best we can. We're not trying to not be our most genuine selves, our most compassionate selves. Sometimes we just don't have access to all the wisdom that's necessary to make the decision. So we do the best we can. Next line in the poem, she says, "It can begin quietly, something you barely even notice. Like the touch of water on your skin, like a knife in a drawer." I find these images to be powerful. Suzuki Roshi talked about awakening as, and this makes sense to Oregonians, going outside in a mist or even in a fog and just walking. And by the time you come back home, your clothes are completely saturated. But the whole time you didn't really even notice that you were getting wet. Sometimes we can't see that we're making any progress on the path, but usually other people can. I remember I started working to pay off my student debt after I'd been at the monastery for a couple of years. And I was working at an assisted living place, and I was the office manager. And people kept coming into the office and just sitting in there. Like, oh, I like it in here. It's peaceful. And I wasn't doing anything, and it helped me see, oh, just my presence has an effect, even though I don't feel like I'm particularly practicing right now. I'm just doing my job. So maybe we're easier to be around as practitioners. And presence does matter. And we can't always feel that, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know what to say right now. I don't know what to do. But just your willingness to show up is huge. To show up as you are. And as practitioners, even though we don't always feel it, we're more in touch with who we really are. Like, and she says this towards the end, the layers start to come off. We don't always notice what falls off or that we were carrying anything. But somehow through this practice of just showing up for ourselves, sitting in our own skin, it can be felt. Something true and genuine and real is being revealed. So don't underestimate the power of your presence, of your listening ear, of your willingness to sit with discomfort and confusion and uncertainty is big, and not react, or to practice non-reactivity. And the last line, the path isn't a line on a map, it's a bright and shining world. Enter wherever you are. Enter wherever you are. And I'll read the last part. You might get thrown back once or twice, but if you push through the outer layers, oh, my friends, then you will know the true welcome. What is this true welcome that is the very essence of the path? I feel like the true welcome is something we can practice. We can practice this attitude, this heart attitude of welcome to whatever comes towards us. And also we can rest into that welcome because the Dharma says, hey, everything, all that you are, all that you're showing up as is welcome. Because your life, your whole of your life is the Dharma. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a lovely talk and a lovely